88,000 people, one trophy, the biggest stage in the history of sport, and for 90-plus minutes, the 2022 World Cup final had already delivered more drama than most tournaments could conjure in an entire lifetime. 3-all, 122 minutes gone, bodies cramping, lungs burning, and then a loose ball, space, a run, a striker alone bearing down on goal. In the real world, you know what happened. Emi Martinez flung out his legendary left leg. The chance was gone. Argentina held on, won on penalties. Messi lifted the trophy. A fairy tale was completed. But what if he didn't save it? What if, in one fraction of a second, Randal Kolo Muani slots the ball cleanly into the bottom corner? What if France win 4-3? What if the whole story, Messi's legacy, Mbappe's ascent, football's entire new order, is rewritten in an instant? One moment, one decision. A completely different reality. Welcome to Rewriting the Game. If you want to explore the greatest what-ifs in football history, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments which timeline we should rewrite next. To understand what's at stake, you have to understand Argentina's journey to that final. It wasn't a coronation, it was a war. They lost to Saudi Arabia in the group stage, one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. They scraped through on nerves and Messi brilliance. Against the Netherlands in the quarter-final, a match that descended into outright chaos, 15 yellow cards, brawling on the pitch, Leandro Paredes volleying the ball into the Dutch bench like he was daring the world to hate him. It was ugly. It was ugly in a way that only a team absolutely desperate to win could be. And looming over all of it, the weight of Lionel Messi's final chapter, his last dance, 35 years old, arguably the greatest footballer to ever live, and still without the one medal that would silence every doubt. Every pundit, every fan, every rival felt it. This was his last real chance. But here's where it gets thorny. Even before the final whistle blew in Lusail, a narrative had started to ferment online and in football circles, whispered at first, then shouted, that this tournament felt guided. The refereeing decisions, the dramatic comebacks, the seismic moments that all seemed to align in Argentina's favor. The accusation was blunt. This World Cup was rigged to give Messi his trophy. Now, let's be clear. There is no credible evidence for any of that. Football is chaotic, and chaos tends to look like conspiracy, but the perception existed. And in an alternate world, a world where Kolo Muani scores, that perception is never born, because in that world the miracle doesn't happen. Now contrast Argentina's emotional, blood-soaked odyssey with what France brought to the table. Cold, calculated, relentless. Didier Deschamps had already managed through a crisis before the tournament even started. Paul Pogba, out. N'Golo Kante, out. And then, days before Qatar, the unthinkable. Karim Benzema, the Ballon d'Or winner, gone. Injury. Any other team falls apart. France just adapted because they had Kylian Mbappé. 8 goals in one tournament. A hat-trick in the World Cup final itself, the first since Geoff Hurst in 1966. He was 23 years old, 23, and he played like a man who had been waiting his entire life to dominate the biggest stage in the world. Because he had, even in defeat, real-world defeat, Mbappé was extraordinary. Imagine then what a victory does to his narrative. Mbappé wasn't just France's star, he was a force of nature. And in this alternate timeline, he refuses to be denied. The ball hits the back of the net. 4-3, France. For approximately half a second, Lusail Stadium is in a state of collective disbelief. Then, the French bench erupts. Players who could barely stand are sprinting. Deschamps on his knees on the touchline. Mbappé, arms wide, screaming at the sky. And the Argentine fans, 88,000 people, and half of them are statues. Light blue jerseys, frozen faces, Some are already crying, not the tears of joy they had rehearsed for decades, but the tears of a nightmare they cannot wake from. The ones who came to see history are watching it happen, just not the history they wanted. And then there is Messi, standing on that pitch, 35 years old, looking at the turf and knowing in his bones, in a way no one else in that stadium could feel, that this was it, that this chance will not come again, that the story ends here without the chapter he always needed. Mbappe, meanwhile, is lifted aloft by his teammates, 23 years old, back-to-back World Cup winner, a feat achieved by only a handful of players in the sport's entire history. He is not the heir anymore, he is the king, and every camera in the world captures it. So what does the world look like after that night? Let's follow the tremors. Messi, the debate, the legacy. Does Lionel Messi retire from international football on the spot? Walking off that pitch in Lusail, it is not hard to imagine him quietly deciding, perhaps without even saying it aloud, that he is done, that there is nothing left to chase. And here is where the Ronaldo debate takes a vicious turn. In our timeline, Messi's World Cup win is widely treated as the definitive seal on his legacy. GOAT, end of conversation. But in this world, the argument rages on. Ronaldo's supporters, already vocal, now have their trump card. Neither of them won it, but at least Ronaldo knew when the chapter was over. Deschamps, the greatest manager alive. Didier Deschamps, a man already holding one World Cup as a manager in 2018, would now have two, back-to-back. The only manager in the modern era to achieve it. Would he be regarded as the greatest international manager of all time? Almost certainly. His place in football history, already secure, becomes something else entirely. A statue waiting to be built, Mbappé, the undisputed era, and Kylian Mbappe enters a new stratosphere. The conversation is no longer about whether he can match Messi or Ronaldo. It's about whether the generation that comes after him will ever match him. He becomes the reference point, the benchmark. The face of football for the next decade is not just confirmed, it is proclaimed. One shot, one moment, and football's entire axis shifts. This is what alternate history does to us. It doesn't just change the record books, it changes how we see the heroes and the villains, how we debate greatness, how a generation of kids grows up understanding who football belongs to. Emi Martinez's save is one of the most celebrated moments in the sport's history, but it was separated from catastrophe by inches, centimeters, a half-second of human decision-making under the most extreme pressure imaginable. That's all it ever takes. One moment, one decision. A completely different world. So, we want to hear from you. If Kolo Muani scores, does Messi retire immediately? Is Mbappe now undeniably the greatest of his generation? Full stop? Does Deschamps deserve to go down as the best international manager ever? Drop it in the comments. The debate starts now, and if you've ever wondered how different football could have looked, if you love diving into the moments that almost happened, subscribe to Rewriting the Game, and let's rewrite the game together.